Hi friends, Caitlin here. I am a music educator and a homeschooling mom, and I've been homeschooling my own kids for 4 years. I've been giving music lessons for since I was 16, so I don't know how many years that is. And I have a background in education, I have a background in music, and I'm really passionate about providing a good education for my kids. And today I wanted to share some of the history curriculum that I have found that I feel confident in teaching to my kids, and I feel confident that it is speaking truth, and it is speaking truth without glossing over the hard parts of history. So I was talking with a friend several years ago and asking her what she used to teach history, because I trusted her viewpoint, and I was just curious. And she shared with me something called History Odyssey, published by Pandia Press, and I just loved it. It's great. So Pandia Press is the publishing company, and I'll share in another video the science that they publish that I also use. But this is the history that we'll talk about today. So they approach history using a classical approach, meaning that you cover 4 different periods of history across 4 years. So ideally it's like you cover it from 1st grade through 4th grade. So say you started in 1st grade, you would cover the unit or the curriculum called Ancient Civilizations. And then in 2nd grade, you would cover Middle Ages, which I'll show you today. In 3rd grade, you would cover, I think it's called Early Modern History. And then in 4th grade, it would be Modern History, so up to present day. So last year, we did Middle Ages. I started this when my oldest was in 1st grade. I started history when my oldest was in 1st grade. At that point, my youngest was 2. He would sit in on history, but he was 2, so he's just getting a surface education at that point, which is totally fine. He does still remember things, though, from 2 years ago. He could tell you about ancient Egyptians and mummies, and that's what really caught his attention. So even at that young age, he was still picking up on history. But I decided it's okay if, my 2 younger kids, if they're just getting some surface stuff in their younger years, because with a classical approach, you circle back around. So in 5th grade, when my oldest is in 5th grade, we're going to go back to ancient civilizations, and we will do level 2. This is level 1 for elementary. We'll do level 2 when he is in middle school, and my younger 2 will do it along with him. And then in high school, we'll circle back again, and we'll cover all 4 periods, but we'll do it at a high school level. And I think that's really awesome because it creates a bit of a well-rounded worldview even at an elementary age, when they don't understand everything, but they are aware that the world is not the same everywhere, and that we have made mistakes in the past, and it's good for us to know about them and to learn from them. So this is year 2 of elementary, so level 1, Middle Ages. So in this level, you're going to cover everything from the Byzantines to all the way up to William Shakespeare. So I don't know about you, but when I think of Middle Ages, I think of like castles and knights, but there's so much more, and this book really covers it well. It will go through every civilization that was around, every country, every continent, and talk at least briefly about the things that were happening in those different parts. So to give you like a little glimpse of what this entails, let's see. So I'm skipping around, not because the things aren't important, but because I wanted a 2-page spread here. So in lesson 7, you spend probably a week or so talking about the Vikings and I realize this is a little bit out of focus. I'll just try to point things out. So here it tells you, like, this is what you need to prepare for. There are several supplementary books that you're going to use with this. This is like the teacher manual, and then you're going to have several other things that you use with it. So there is there's an activity book that gives you different things, like different foods you could make, or different costumes that you could create, or different poems you could write that were popular in the time period that you're talking about, in the civilization that you're reading about. And then there are 3 textbooks that you use in conjunction with this. And this section here tells you use this book and use this page number through this book. So it's extremely well laid out. The 3 books that you will use have different viewpoints of history, which I find fantastic. I personally come from a more conservative background, and I like that these 3 curriculums, they show you a conservative view, and they show you a more liberal view, and then they also just try to show you the facts without having a skewed view. So Story of the World, this is a curriculum it's a textbook that actually goes along with a different curriculum, and a lot of people use it. It's probably the most conservative view that's being represented in these 3 textbooks, but it does read like a story. So it's a really great read aloud, and kind of has you imagine what it would be like to be in this day and age, and that kind of thing. So it reads, it's not really something your kids are gonna want to look at necessarily while you read it. This is something I read a lot while my kids were playing Legos or coloring or whatever, because there aren't a ton of pictures. This one has a very innocent approach to history. It's called A Child's History of the World, and so it speaks to you about history as if a child is speaking. And it tells you, imagine if you were a little boy in this time. So it starts out, once upon a time there was a boy just like me, etc., etc., etc. And then it keeps talking, he was always awake long before this time. He used to lie there, think about all sorts of curious things. So did I. And so it kind of tries to draw your child in to feel like they relate to the subject at hand. And then, so it goes through different things. I should mention that this book, it goes from the beginning of time to modern history. So this you're going to use from ancient civilizations through modern history. I'm not sure if you will use it in the level 2 history or not. I haven't looked at that. It's similar to this in that it's a good read aloud, but you probably want your kids to have something else to be doing while you're reading it, and then they can kind of listen to it as a story. So that's the other one. And then this one is a fun one for your kids to actually see and flip through with you. It's called the Usborne Internet Linked Encyclopedia of World History, and it covers everything. And depending on your viewpoint of history and your viewpoint of science, there may be things that you don't necessarily agree with. It comes from a very unbiased view of both science and history, and it relies heavily on scientific discovery and historical discoveries. So you may find there are things that you're not so sure about, but I think that's part of learning, is seeing things that may be different from your viewpoint. So anyway, it has colored illustrations. It kind of reads like a DK book, if you're familiar with those. There's a lot of information, though it is broken into sections. And then the fun thing about this is that there are internet links up here, and I know you can't see that. Sorry, it's not great lighting, but it takes you to Usborne, a quick links page, and then it will link you to different websites or activities that go along with whatever you're teaching. So these are the 3 supplementary textbooks that you use with them. You can find pretty much all of those on thrift books so that you're not paying retail price, because they can get pricey. But over here in this binder, that's like the teacher curriculum, it will tell you in the Usborne book, read pages 212 to 213. In the children's Child's History of the World, read chapter 49. In Story of the World, read chapter 14. So it lays it out really well. You can literally roll out of bed, open this up, and know exactly what to do with zero prep, which is fantastic. And then down here, there are some additional activities if you want to, find some games that go along with what the Vikings would do. And then there's book lists. And your local library is so good for that. You can find, usually you can find at least some of these books, or they give you ideas of books, and you might find similar ones at your library, and you could just load up your library shelf and read picture books all day long about Vikings or whatever it might be that you're learning. So that is like the teacher guide. And then in this is like our written activities or that kind of thing that went along with our history. I need to make some room here on my table. So most of those chapters have a map that go along with it, so that you are seeing where in the world the history you're talking about actually took place. So you do cover a bit of history here. You learn kind of accidentally, you learn about map keys and that kind of thing. And there's also like coloring pages that are recommended, and we didn't always do that. Some other things that we did were to define different vocabulary. Like here we defined what a monk is, or who a monk is, and we wrote down the definition. Mostly this is full of maps, and I really like that the map aspect is included, because it makes the world not seem so huge and abstract, and it also just reinforces map reading skills. And then we also would sometimes do like writing prompts. Like here my kids are supposed to draw and explain what a yurt was. And so they did it at different levels. This is my preschooler's page. He wrote one word. And then my older kids were a little more elaborate, a little more creative with their writing and that kind of stuff. Along with Middle Ages, we also covered Native American nations. So when we got to North America, that's mainly what we talked about. And when we got to there, we did an Evan Moore workbook that was called Native American History Pockets, I believe. And through that, and through the different activities, you create this history pocket book. And so we have 7 pockets, I think. And we learned about different nations. We didn't cover all of them, but we learned about different nations and what made them unique, where they lived, different shelters that they used, kind of, that kind of thing, what their culture was like. And I thought that was super cool, and it gave an identity to different nations in our own continent that not every history curriculum will cover. So that is what I use for history. Like I said at the beginning, I feel like it does a great job of being well-rounded, unbiased, and does not hide the shameful parts of history. Like, the mistakes that were made and the mistakes that people need to own up to and learn from. And so I appreciate that. I've always appreciated that, but I especially appreciate it in this day and age. So that's what I use for history. Once again, that's by Pandia Press. It's called History Odyssey. And this you can find at pandiapress.com, I think. And you can check it out. They also, there are also printable samples, I believe, on their website for every history level and every science level, which I will cover in another video. So hope that's helpful. Please share this video with anyone you think could benefit from exploring some history curriculum. And yeah, hope to see you and hope that you can check out another video soon.